Thank you, Acting Speaker. And I rise today to speak on the Youth Justice Bill 2024. And this again is another issue that is critical in my electorate at the moment and has been very topical since I began in this role. And that's been highlighted, and I appreciate all the work that the Shadow Minister has done on this bill. And appreciate too the visit that he had in Mildura, listening to victims of crime, police and other agencies that work in the space when the member for Berwick visited Mildura earlier this year. And he's coming back again very, very soon to do some more work in this space, because if you're familiar with the data of the latest crime stats data, Mildura is again up there. In fact, we're up another 9.8%. That doesn't sound like much, but it is, especially when it keeps going up and up and up, and those stats are not coming down. It makes Mildura #1 in criminal incidents overall. Mildura is also #1 in aggravated burglaries. Mildura is #1 in youth crime. What we are down on, though, is people who feel safe walking alone at night. That has come down 24.15%, probably the lowest it's ever been, and that is alarming, especially considering the lack of public transport and other safe ways to get home if you are not driving, because we are very, very spread out, and getting from Moorbeen to Redcliffs or from the city heart to somewhere else, even over the river to Coomiella or Detton, can be a challenge at times, so that is alarming. These are not the places that Mildura should be known to be #1 for. We are #1 in sunny days. We are #1 in food produced per capita. We're #1 in a lot of other things, you know, lifestyle. There's a reason why 68,000 of us choose to live there. But the local members obviously is obviously an attraction. But our fundamental focus should be community safety. And I have had, Mildura has been neglected in this space over the past 5 years in particular, through youth crime and youthful homelessness as well, which has worsened with the cost of living. And it was great to see the members of the Loddon Mallee Homelessness Network on the steps of Parliament, and I spent a bit of time speaking with them yesterday about all of the issues and what has created to a very visible increase to homelessness over the past 12 months in particular. And they did mention that those coming out of institutional settings, in particular, it's a really unique part of the world, and I say this all the time, particularly those coming out of Broken Hill Correctional Facility, which is just over the river, coming back to be with family that may not work out. They end up sleeping rough. So it was great to get an insight into those sorts of things yesterday. But there is a youth homelessness issue, and we talk about, and I've heard various members talk about these children not being able to be at home. We know all this. You know, we know that home is not a safe place for them a lot of the time. We know that there are issues. We know, as the member for Frankston said, we know that they are probably victims themselves. There are agencies working in this space to rectify that. But the youth homelessness, you know, we know all that, but ultimately we have to also listen to the victims of these crimes. And I have been constantly inviting people into my office and sitting down and listening to victims and victims' families, and about the fear that is very, very real on the ground. And youth justice and how to solve it isn't a blanket issue. And some of the agencies, particularly Hands Up Mallee, in our part of the world where, like I said, there's very little public transport, especially not after 9 o'clock, things need to be community-led. There needs to be flexibility with all of these agencies so they can work together. But when we talk about victims of crime, there also needs to be more support for those victims. We had the Sunraysia Indian Association contact me on New Year's Eve. There was a very distressing arson attack on one of their stores, and that really upset the community. Now, the Indian community in Mildura contribute an enormous amount to our community on a very, very broad scale, and the estimated loss was around $200,000. And it was determined that the perpetrators, after the police members had done their job, were 4 teenagers, all under the age of 15. Now, they knew that what they were doing was wrong. Of course they did. That's not just an act of mischief. Also, we had Matt McLean, and I've spoken to Matt a number of times. We tabled a petition that he had run about the attack in broad daylight on his daughter at an establishment in Mildura for social media content. Surely that's not okay. They know that that is not okay. They're doing it for likes, and that is something that really has to be addressed. That petition sought to tighten laws, not weaken them, but tighten laws around those who film, post and participate in crime for social media content. Damien McDonald as well. He spoke to him a while ago. He was over in Perth at a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert, which I was very jealous of, but got a phone call in the middle of the concert from his daughters who were in the middle of an aggravated burglary. One of his daughters was 15, the other one's 18, and he's since been back. He met with the member for Berwick and I to talk about the mental health impacts that's had on his daughters and his family as a whole. These are the people that really need support, and fundamentally, that is government's job, isn't it? To look after community safety and keep us safe. These people, and these are just some of the victims, some of the cases that I thought I'd highlight today, given that I've only got 10 minutes, to talk about. You know, and when we talk about the agencies, and we talk about police, and I should take a minute because in all of these cases, the police responded brilliantly. They are working so hard. The Minister for Police was with me a couple of weeks ago in Mildura to meet with those hard-working members, and a lot of them will have very frank conversations with me, off the record, of course, and they make sure that I keep it off the record because they are fearful of, you know, chatting to their MP about these things, which is crazy to me. But one quote that has stuck with me and keeps going around in my head is that they come in these doors, we bring the perpetrators in, and they are generally a small group of young people that are committing these crimes, but is having an effect on, and usually a negative effect on others. They come in the front doors of the police station, they go out the back door through the courts and through the justice system, and then they're back out on the street, and they call it a washing machine. It's just a cycle that keeps going around and around with little or no consequences. So there's no deterrent for these kids to stop committing these crimes that they're doing. We talk about organisations in the last couple of minutes. I mentioned before Hands Up Mallee. Sunraysia Community Health Services Home Base is another extraordinary program. And these, along with Hands Up Mallee, are community-led. You know, they have got local people working on the ground with local families, local kids, but because of the restrictions they have, for example, if there's a bus running to Home Base, which is a facility that young people can go and hang out in, they can study, they can eat, there's a bus, but of course that bus can't run after 5 o'clock. Now, I don't know if you're aware of how things work, but a lot of crime happens after 5 o'clock, and young people need a place to go, especially after 5 o'clock and after school, if they're even going to school in the first place. Hands Up Mallee have asked multiple times for the Minister for Youth Justice to visit Mildura because it needs ministerial intervention, particularly in my electorate. These agencies, Sunraysia Community Health, Hands Up Mallee, the Clontarf Academies, the Curry Stars, Madas, all of the other agencies that work in silos and can't collaborate to deliver what could be a really good solution for all young people in Mildura. But because the guidelines and the rules are so inflexible, no one puts up their hands and says, yes, we can do that, we're funded to do that, let's work together. There's an inability, and we need ministerial intervention, not laws that are too little too late. Quite frankly, it's all too little too late, and raising the age of criminal responsibility, you know, when you have got arson attacks being committed by people under the age of 15, some of them are under the age of 12, we know that there is young people running around as young as 9, it just will not work. So, of course, we're opposed to this bill. More work is desperately needed.